You're listening to The Jacob Valk Show. He's breaking down the latest and greatest in sports as only he can. Follow him on Twitter @RealJacobValk. Here he is, Jacob Valk.
Hello, sports fans. Welcome to another edition of the Jacob Valk Show. I am the Jacob Valk, except no imitation. I've got to start with Lions-Browns. Jared Goff did not start for the Lions yesterday. He was inactive because of an oblique injury. And seeing as though the Lions always play on Thanksgiving, his status for Thursday is up in the air. Given what happened to Justin Fields, his rib injury, there's a chance that the first Thanksgiving matchup on Thursday features Andy Dalton going up against either Tim Boyle or David Blau. You really have no excuse to not talk to your family members from 12:30 to 4:30. I mean, Tim Boyle was anemic. This guy only had 77 passing yards. And that was for the whole game. Matthew Stafford got hurt in a game late last year against the Buccaneers. So he only had 17 passing yards in that game. Before that, the last time a Lions starting quarterback had less than 77 passing yards was Dante Culpepper on December 20th, 2009. Incredibly, the Lions almost won that game. They lost to the Cardinals 31-24. Look, my point in bringing this up isn't to rip Tim Boyle, okay? We know that he's not an NFL quarterback. I think we've known that for a while. But I've defended Jared Goff a lot. I think he is getting a bad rap. I think he's been put in a terrible situation in Detroit. He has not played great. There's no question about that. But is it Goff's fault? I'd argue no. I mean, you've now seen multiple quarterbacks fail with the Lions this year. Why are they failing? Because the Lions are absolutely bereft of talent. You know the Lions only had one wide receiver catch a pass yesterday? It was Amon-Ra St. Brown, 4 catches for 18 yards. You know they only had 3 pass catchers have multiple catches? TJ Hawkinson, St. Brown, and DeAndre Swift. If not for DeAndre Swift, I shudder to think where the Lions would be. They'd be getting shut out in every game. I mean, I've heard some people call for Jared Goff's benching. That wouldn't solve anything. This isn't Jared Goff's fault, what's happening with the Lions. Look, maybe Goff was just a product of Sean McVay. That wouldn't stun me. If Goff is on a new team next year, or it's a new system, maybe he fails there too. I don't know. But my point is, this is not Jared Goff's fault, what is happening in Detroit. The Lions may go winless. The way they're playing right now, that wouldn't stun me. They're 0-9-1 right now. They've got 7 more games to go. You want to tell me they'll win on Thursday? At home against the Bears? With a banged up Justin Fields or Andy Dalton at quarterback? Okay, that's possible. But if you lose that game, you only have 2 more winnable games on the schedule. You've got the Falcons, the 3rd to last week of the season, in Atlanta. That's winnable. And then the penultimate week of the season, the Lions will be in Seattle for what could be Russell Wilson's last home game at Lumen Field. You know that Seahawks fans are going to be out in force, and I'd be stunned if Wilson lost that game. Look, the Lions went with a rebuild this year. Obviously, trading Stafford, getting all those picks. No one expected the Lions to be any good. But to be 0-9-1, that's not just a quarterback issue. That's a team issue. This is a team that really doesn't have a ton of talent. And again, to go back to Goff, you think about the 08 Lions. The team that went 0-16. Did anyone ever look at that team and say that's Dan Orlovsky's fault? Or that's John Kitna's fault? Or that's Dante Culpepper's fault? Or did they say this is a team that has absolutely no talent whatsoever besides this young up-and-coming wide receiver named Calvin Johnson? I mean, this Lions team is similar. Maybe it's a little better, as opposed to having one building block. This Lions team certainly has more than one. DeAndre Swift is a building block. TJ Hawkinson is a building block. Amani Owarie is a building block. I'll be generous and say that Charles Harris is a building block. He's having a really good year with the Lions. Penei Sewell's obviously a building block. That may be it. And not for nothing, but all those guys who I mentioned, only Sewell has the potential to be great. Hawkinson's not great. Swift isn't great. Owarie's really good. I wouldn't say he's great. And Charles Harris is probably a rotational player on a Super Bowl winner. This isn't Jared Goff's fault. This is a Lions team that has no talent whatsoever. If TJ Hawkinson, DeAndre Swift, Penei Sewell, Amani Owarie, and Charles Harris are your 5 best non-quarterbacks, you're not going to win many games. And the sad thing is, I don't think heads will roll in Detroit. They just brought in Brad Holmes. They just brought in Dan Campbell. You want to tell me they're going to be one and done? I don't see that happening. I'll say this, though. Next year, the Lions better hit the ground running. Because you can have one absolutely dreadful year and then say, hey, it's my first year. Happened to Tom Landry. Happened to Bill Belichick with the Patriots. It happens. The thing is, once you stack those bad years on top of each other, like a Hugh Jackson, that's when you run into trouble. Moving on now to Colts Bills. I think the verdict is in. Jonathan Taylor is really good. In fact, if you wanted to use the word great to describe him, I wouldn't be opposed to that. This guy looks like the second coming of Edgar and James. I mean, for goodness sake, Taylor had 4 rushing touchdowns against a fantastic Bills defense. He added a receiving touchdown also, so 5 total touchdowns against one of the best defenses in the NFL. 32 carries for 185 yards. The guy was absolutely incredible. We all know this. What we may not know, if you haven't looked at the standings, is that the Buffalo Bills are now a half game behind the Patriots. The freaking New England Patriots are in first place in the AFC East. A division that we thought the Bills would run away with is now in the hands of the Patriots until probably Thursday, because the Bills will be in New Orleans for Thanksgiving. I think the Bills will win that game. I'm not liking what I'm seeing from the Saints. So if the Bills win that game, they move into a tie with the Patriots. But if the Patriots beat the Titans in Foxborough on Sunday, the Patriots will retake sole possession of first place. I saw some people saying that we were too quick to anoint the Bills as a Super Bowl contender. You look at teams like the Chiefs and the Chargers, where they are now compared to where they were earlier in the year. The Browns, too, were in that mix. The Bengals are in that mix. No, I don't think that's true. Even though the standings may not reflect it, I do think there's a clear hierarchy in the AFC. The NFC, it's clear as day what the hierarchy is. It's any combination of the Cowboys, Packers, Buccaneers, Cardinals, and Rams. Sort those teams however you want. But in the AFC, there is a cream of the crop. Maybe it's less obvious, but it is there. The Bills are in that mix. The Ravens are in that mix. The Bengals are in that mix. You want to tell me the Browns aren't in that mix? Alright, fine. I'll give it to you. But the Titans are in that mix. The Chiefs are in that mix. And the Chargers are in that mix. See, what you should really be using to support that example are teams like the Raiders and Broncos. Teams that looked like playoff teams earlier in the season, now they've come crashing down to earth. The extracurricular stuff with the Raiders finally seems to be catching up to them. And the Broncos are just flatlining. But did you ever take the Raiders seriously? We've seen them do this the past couple years. They start out strong, then they fade away late. I was never 100% sold on the Raiders. I was sold on the Broncos' defense. And even though I like Teddy Bridgewater, I'll acknowledge that you're not going to do much with him at quarterback. Maybe if the Broncos were in an easier division, as opposed to the AFC West, where every team is 500, the Broncos would be better, but Patrick Mahomes, Justin Herbert, Derek Carr, and Teddy Bridgewater. Who's at the bottom of the heap? Bridgewater. In fact, that's probably the correct order. If you want to put Carr over Herbert, I wouldn't hate it. I just don't think I would do it. No, there is still a hierarchy in the AFC. Again, the standings may not show it, but we know who the best teams in the AFC are. Even if the Patriots end up getting home field, I'd still have a tough time picking them to do anything special in the playoffs. I do think the Bills will be the last team standing in the AFC East. But I prefer the Bills to win the AFC East over the Patriots? Absolutely. Out of the three division rivals of the Jets, their biggest rivals are the Dolphins, then the Patriots, then the Bills. Do I strongly dislike the Bills? The answer is yes. I wouldn't say I hate them. Maybe if they dominate the AFC East for the next decade, I'll grow to hate them, but for right now, I don't. So I'm really rooting for the Bills to win the AFC East over the Patriots. Moving on now to Ravens-Bears. After I picked the Ravens minus 4.5 or whatever I said, we found out that Lamar Jackson may not play because he has a non-COVID illness. Then he was officially listed inactive for yesterday's game, so Tyler Huntley got the start. Huntley did not look great. He got sacked 6 times. Didn't throw a touchdown. Threw an interception. The one plus to Huntley was that Greg Roman, the Ravens offensive coordinator, didn't need to change the game plan much. Because while Lamar Jackson is a million times better than Tyler Huntley, they're both similar quarterbacks. They're both very athletic, love to run, very mobile. Not much changed. And not much changed with the end result either. The Ravens beat the Bears. Not convincingly. They only won 16-13. But still, they got the win. I mean, Huntley wasn't great, but he didn't need to be. The Bears are really disappointing. Like, I've defended Matt Nagy a lot, but it is tough to defend him now. The Bears are 3-7. They've lost their last 5 games. Justin Fields does not look good. It may be time for a coaching change in Chicago. Here's my question, though. I picked the Ravens minus 4 or 4.5. Whatever I said, I don't remember. I know it was one of those two. But that was because I thought Lamar Jackson would play. When it was revealed that Jackson may not play, the line plummeted to Ravens -1. Obviously, I don't do shows on the weekend, so I couldn't alter my pick. Is it fair for me to exclude the Ravens game from my total? If you want to tell me no, once you put a bet down, that's it, okay, I get that. But if you want to tell me that Jackson being out changed things so dramatically that you've got to be fair, I see that. I mean, look, if the Ravens had won by a touchdown, I still would have counted it. That's all I'm saying. I don't know. You'll have to let me know. Hit me up on Twitter, @RealJacobValk. Moving on now to Texans Titans. And you remember when I said the Titans are part of the cream of the crop of the AFC? They are. You can't say they're not. No other team in the AFC has 8 wins. But boy, oh boy, did they not play like it yesterday. I understand that you're without Derrick Henry. But you can't have Ryan Tannehill throw 52 passes and expect to win. Especially when the guy throws 4 interceptions and puts the ball on the ground twice. That's not going to work. Look, I understand that the Titans were trailing for most of the game. They were down 12-0 at the half. They were down 19-0 after the second Tyrod Taylor touchdown. But that's no excuse to have Tannehill throw the ball 52 times. He's not that type of a quarterback. If that's what you end up doing offensively, you're going to lose. The Titans did not play well. They didn't execute. I mean, they proved that they can win without Derrick Henry. They won a big Sunday night game against the Rams a couple weeks ago. Then they beat the Saints. Not terrible teams. I mean, the Rams are really, really good. The Saints aren't terrible. Not great, but there are worse teams in the NFL. This was just a dreadful job by the Titans. They've got to be better than this. This was a game that they should have won easily. I mean, there's a reason that the spread was -10. At Nissan Stadium, going up against a dreadful Texans team. You know, not for nothing, but David Culley should be commended for getting this team to 2 wins. I don't think David Culley's a good coach. I don't think he's going to lead the Texans to the promised land. But to get this team to 2 wins, there is something there, right? I mean, people thought this team could go winless. Granted, they were guaranteed to not go winless the first week of the season, and then they went on an 8-game losing streak. But I'll be fair. I mean, this isn't a dreadful coaching job by Culley. Not great. Again, he's not gonna lead the Texans to the promised land, but let me ask you something. Who's done a better coaching job this year? David Culley or Pete Carroll? David Culley or Joe Judge? David Culley or Ron Rivera? The answer to all 3 of those is probably Culley. There were a few extensions signed in the NFL over the weekend. I'll start with the Denver Broncos. Tim Patrick signed a 3-year extension worth $34 million, $18.5 million of which is guaranteed. And Courtland Sutton got a 4-year extension worth $60.8 million, $34.9 million of which is guaranteed. So let's start with Patrick. He's making a little over $11 million a year. That may be a little too rich for my liking. I mean, Patrick's really good, don't get me wrong. He has 37 catches this year for 523 yards and 4 touchdowns. And obviously, it's a great story. Undrafted free agent out of Utah, has to work his tail off to make it in the NFL. He latches on with the Broncos. Doesn't do much his first couple of years with them. Then his 3rd year, he explodes. 51 catches for 742 yards and 6 touchdowns. The thing is, though, if that's his ceiling, is giving him just over $11 million a year the wisest thing in the world? It's not a terrible move. It's not the most egregious overpay I've ever seen. I would have gone $10 million at the absolute most for 3 years, so a shade over 11 isn't terrible. Here's my question, though. What are you going to do with all these targets? I mean, you're giving Teddy Bridgewater, or whoever the Broncos quarterback of the future will be, a ton of weapons. There's no question. Patrick, Sutton, who I'll get into in a minute, Jerry Jeudy, KJ Hamler, Noah Fant, Javonte Williams, Melvin Gordon, maybe. There's only one football. Someone's going to have to take a back seat, and you can't tell me that out of all those wide receivers, Patrick, Sutton, Hamler, and Jeudy, that Patrick doesn't have the lowest ceiling. I mean, Patrick is good. He's not great. I don't hate this move. I don't love it either. I love the Sutton move, though. I'm a big Courtland Sutton fan. Loved him coming out of SMU. I think he's one of the most underrated players in the NFL. Had a really good rookie season. An even better sophomore season. He got hurt last year, but this year he's come back really strong. 43 catches for 617 yards. Only 2 touchdowns, which I don't like. But, again, Bridgewater needs to share the wealth a little bit. I mean, that's an outstanding move by the Broncos. 4 years at 15.2 for Sutton. I'll do that. I'll do that in a minute. That's a great move by the Broncos, and you've got to commend them for putting a really strong core of skill position guys together. You may have some upset players, you may have some upset fantasy owners if they start Sutton and he's not targeted, or they start Jeudy and he's not targeted, or something like that. But at the end of the day, if the team is winning, that is all that matters. If the Broncos get a better quarterback, and Bridgewater's not a bad quarterback, but you can do better than him. If the Broncos add on at quarterback, watch out. This team could be scary. in the not-too-distant future. Moving on now to the Eagles, signing Avonte Maddox to a 3-year extension worth $22.5 million, and TJ Edwards to a 1-year deal worth $3.2 million. Maddox's deal includes $13.3 million of guaranteed money. Edwards' contract includes $2.15 million in guaranteed money. And these are both great moves. Avonte Maddox is very underrated. He is thriving in the new defense that Jonathan Gannon has installed. Before this year, Maddox didn't have a Pro Football Focus grade greater than 63.3. This year, it's 74.6. He looked like a bust not that long ago. Now that he's gotten away from Jim Schwartz, and I'm not knocking Schwartz, I'm just saying now that he's in a system that better suits his skill set, he's thriving. Also, he's 25. This guy would easily eclipse this deal in free agency. It's a great move by the Eagles. There's nothing to dislike about it. As for Edwards, he's another feel-good story. Went undrafted out of Wisconsin. Had to grind to earn a spot with the Eagles. And he's turned into a good middle linebacker. He has a 66.8 overall grade according to Pro Football Focus. He has dominated the last 4 games. This guy has 44 tackles, 3 tackles for loss, an interception, and 3 passes defended against in his last 4 games. Incredible. Outstanding moves by the Eagles. These make a ton of sense. And I'll say this, I was dead wrong about the Eagles. Alright, I thought they'd be really bad. I thought they'd be at the bottom of the NFC East. They're 5-6. Not great, but not terrible. They're second in the NFC East. I mean, Jalen Hurts doesn't look great, but he certainly looks better than I thought he'd be. Devontae Smith looks excellent, which I knew he would. Miles Sanders looks solid. Nick Sirianni seems to be doing a really good job there. Howie Roseman seems to have kept his job for the foreseeable future. I mean, if this had gone belly up, and it was very possible that it could have, there would have been a bloodbath in Philly. Eagles fans would be going nuts. Heads would roll. The Eagles aren't bad. Like, give Howie Roseman credit. His back was against the wall. He made the move to fire a Super Bowl winning head coach, conduct a really bad head coaching search, but he seems to have found a solid coach in Nick Sirianni. Seems to have found a decent quarterback in Jalen Hurts. I'm not going to say great. I'm not going to say very good. I'll say decent. The Eagles are a lot better than I thought they'd be. Alright, now I'll give you some college football Valk talk. I'll start with OSU destroying MSU. Not going to spend a lot of time on this game. There's not much to dissect. I mean, OSU won 56-7. I'm not going to insult your intelligence by doing a deep dive on it. The one thing I'll say is, Michigan better watch out. I mean, OSU seems to be clicking on all cylinders right now. And they're not stupid. If they had lost, Michigan State leapfrogs them. And with Oregon losing, which I'll get into in a second, the CFP would be Georgia, Alabama, Cincinnati, and Michigan State. Maybe they would flip-flop Michigan State and Cincinnati, but OSU would be out. So give the Buckeyes credit for winning a game that they needed to win, and winning seems like an understatement, because they eviscerated the Spartans. That game was over from the jump. It was a joke. Terrible job by Michigan State. I thought they'd be a lot better. But now on to the big upset. Utah knocking off Oregon. Another rout. The Utes beat the Ducks 38-7. The last thing on earth that the Pac-12 wanted was for Oregon to lose this game. It ensures that they won't have a team in the CFP. This was their year. This was a golden opportunity for the Pac-12 to be represented in the CFP. A one-loss Oregon team doesn't get in. It just doesn't. I mean, you're going to have the Pac-12 fans and the Oregon fans saying they should still be in over OSU because Oregon beat OSU earlier in the year. That's not how the committee's going to look at it. I'm not saying that you're wrong. You have a great point. But the only way that a Pac-12, AAC, Conference USA, Sun Belt, whatever non-powerhouse conference you want to think of, and yes, I said powerhouse, not Power 5, because the Pac-12 is in the Power 5, but the committee doesn't treat them like they are. The only way that you're going to have a team like that in the CFP is if the stars align. And one of the stars that need to align is that team being undefeated. Oregon losing knocks them out. It's just that simple. It's not right. You can make a very strong argument for Oregon to be in over OSU. But there is something that I like. And it's something that I call the quality of the loss. OSU lost to Oregon. A team that at the time was the 12th ranked team in the nation by the AP. And they got as high as 3 by the committee. Great team. Utah, on the other hand, was ranked 23rd by the committee and 24th by the AP. OSU's loss to Oregon is more defensible than Oregon's loss to Utah. You want to tell me that if Oregon's that good, they should be in? Their dominance is keeping them out? Again, fair. I don't begrudge the Pac-12 fans and the Ducks fans for wanting Oregon in. You can make a very strong argument for it. I mean, I'll say this. Their CFP hopes may not be dead entirely. If Alabama loses a game, if Cincinnati loses a game, And if OSU beats Michigan, maybe, just maybe, the Ducks can sneak in if they win out. See, the committee's in a tough spot. They just may not realize it. The top 4 is going to be Georgia, Alabama, OSU, Cincinnati. But that's tenuous. The only team that is guaranteed to be in the CFP is Georgia. If Alabama loses to Georgia, not this coming Saturday, but the Saturday after, I don't think it's a guarantee that the Crimson Tide gets into the CFP. If OSU loses to Michigan, OSU's not getting in. Michigan is. If Cincinnati loses, forget about it. They're out. You want to tell me Cincinnati's not going to lose to East Carolina? It's not even worth bringing up? Look, I'm going to pick Cincinnati in that game, but the game is in North Carolina, Greenville, North Carolina, to be specific. And ECU isn't bad. They're 7-4. An upset wouldn't knock my socks off. It would surprise me, but it wouldn't stun me. It wouldn't stun me like Georgia Tech beating Georgia. That would stun me. ECU beating Cincinnati, that wouldn't stun me. There's a difference between being stunned and being surprised. But the odds are that Cincinnati will win that game. So let's put Cincinnati in as an ironclad CFP team. Let's put Georgia in as an ironclad CFP team. Let's assume that OSU beats Michigan. Certainly possible that Michigan can win. I'm going to be watching that game. But, for argument's sake, let's say OSU wins. Here's where it gets tricky. The SEC title game. Georgia, Alabama. Let's say Georgia wins. Alabama has 2 losses. Who gets that 4th spot? Does a 2-loss Alabama team get in over a 1-loss Oregon team? A 1-loss Notre Dame team? A 1-loss Oklahoma or Oklahoma State team, depending on who wins Bedlam? I can make a very strong argument for Oregon to get in over a 2-loss Bama team. If Alabama beats Georgia, okay. We've got Alabama, Georgia, OSU, Cincy. OSU may even move ahead of Georgia. But boy, it's tricky. You'd have a lot of people upset if a 2-loss Bama team gets in. And you know what? They'd be 100% right to be upset. I wouldn't put Bama in with 2 losses. I'll tell you right now. My vote for this week would be Georgia, Alabama, OSU, Cincy. If Alabama loses, you know who I'd put in? It wouldn't be Oregon. It wouldn't be Notre Dame. It wouldn't be the winner of Bedlam. It would be UTSA. I'm telling you right now, that's who my vote would go to. I would put an undefeated Roadrunners team in over a 1-loss Big 12 team or a 1-loss Oregon team. And I definitely put them in over Notre Dame. I feel like we need to award teams for going undefeated. Cincinnati barely gets in. Cincinnati gets in because Oregon loses. UTSA has no chance. That's wrong. UTSA is undefeated, just like Cincinnati. What makes Cincinnati better? If Alabama wins, there's no issue. The top 4 teams are Georgia, Alabama, OSU, Cincy. I don't care how you arrange them. But if Bama loses, I would put UTSA in. We're going to have a very fun couple of weeks in college football. Man, I love this time of year. Alright, now I'll give you some MLB Valk talk. Specifically on my beloved Yankees. I know that a lot of teams made moves over the weekend, but if I go through every one, we'll be here until Christmas. So, please indulge me. I just want to talk about the Yankees. They performed some 40-man roster gymnastics. You don't need to know about the 5 guys who they protected. Alright, really doesn't matter for the purposes of this show. The people who they DFA'd to make room for some of those guys, you do need to know about. Clint Frazier, Rougned Odor, and Tyler Wade are all gone. In fact, Tyler Wade was traded to the Angels in exchange for cash or the proverbial player to be named later. I sincerely hope that that player to be named later is Shohei Ohtani, but if it is Mike Trout, I'll be okay with that too. Let's go through Frazier, Odor, and Wade. Frazier, I've spoken about him for a long time, alright? I don't like him. Really never saw a ton of upside with him. Sure, in 2017, when he first came up, I was excited. But then he kept getting shuttled back and forth between the Bronx and Scranton, and it's like, okay, the Yankees see something in him that needs fine-tuning. The fans talk him up like he's the second coming of Babe Ruth. Meanwhile, the guy can't feel to save his life. He seemingly puts it all together in 2020. I sorta, kinda become convinced that he can turn into a decent player. Then he's given an opportunity. He was the opening day left fielder. Like, think about it this way. If Clint Frazier had turned into the player that a ton of Yankees fans said he would, they're not trading for Joey Gallo. Instead of turning into that, Frazier just hit the wall hard. He ended up hitting 186 with only 5 home runs and 15 RBIs. He had a concussion, he had migraines, the whole 9 yards. He only played in 66 games. He did not have a good year. It is surprising to see the Yankees move on from him like this. But I'm happy to see Frazier gone. I'm happy that I'm no longer going to have to deal with Yankees fans after a short spurt where Frazier looks good, say, hey, look, you were wrong, this guy's really good, blah, blah, blah. At the end of the day, I was proven right about Clint Frazier. Alright, it looked touch and go there for a little bit, but at the end of the day, I was proven right. I'm glad to see Frazier gone. Rougned Odor is really surprising. Brian Cashman just traded for him this year. Seriously, early in the season. He trades a couple solid minor leaguers in Antonio Cabello and Josh Stowers. Not exactly ham and eggers for Odor. Now, Odor was not great with the Yankees, but he wasn't terrible either. I mean, this guy only had 65 hits for the Yankees. But, you know how many RBIs he had? 39. That's pretty impressive. I mean, this guy's a clutch player. And I thought he could have been a good lefty bat to have off the bench. You want to tell me that he doesn't fit the Yankees? They don't need any more high strikeout, low average guys? Okay, fair enough. But then why trade for him in the first place? To DFA someone a year after trading for him is tough for me to justify. You want to tell me that they never should have traded for him in the first place? Again, fair. Totally fair. But they still traded for him. Like, think about it this way. There were some people who said that the Yankees shouldn't have traded for Joey Gallo. But the Yankees gave up a decent group of prospects to get him. If the Yankees give him away, I'll be very upset. Tyler Wade being DFA'd is probably the most surprising of the three guys. Here's a guy who seemingly put it all together last year. We kept hearing for years that his bat would come. Give it time. His bat would come. We didn't think it would, but he did hit .268 this year. He had .354 on base percentage. Obviously, a ton of speed. Plays every infield position except first. Plays all the outfield positions. And he played in over 100 games. So let me get this straight. The offseason after his bat finally comes around, that's when you get rid of him? You could have gotten rid of him last year. Every Yankees fan would have supported it. See, there's a common denominator with these moves. And it may not be obvious, but it's there. Brian Cashman doesn't understand that you need to trade players at their highest point. Last year, Clint Frazier would have gotten you something pretty darn good. In fact, even before that, before we all came to realize that this guy is really useless, he could have gotten you something. Remember all those trade packages that were bandied about? Too many to mention. They had guys like Frazier and Andujar at the center of it. The running joke is that Yankees fans overvalued these guys. Some of the trade packages that were being thrown out were ridiculous, but some of them made sense. Rougned Odor, you trade for him, and now you're going to give him away or cut him. I understand that the Yankees aren't going to have to pay any of his salary. But here's a crazy idea. Don't trade for him at all. There's no value to bringing him in. And Tyler Wade, you could have thrown him into a Frazier deal, an Andujar deal, a whatever deal, and no one would have begrudged you for it. Now you give him away to the Angels? You've got to get rid of guys at their highest point. This is what I was saying last year. Like, Clint Frazier will never be more valuable than this. I think those were my exact words last year. It was like so obvious to me that Frazier wouldn't work out. It was so obvious to me that Odor made no sense. Wade, I never thought would turn into anything more than a late-inning defensive replacement / pinch runner. His bat finally comes around. That's when the Yankees get rid of him. There was no one else that the Yankees could DFA. They couldn't get rid of Sanchez. They couldn't get rid of Chris Gittens. That's 2. Frazier makes 3, so keep Odor and Wade. Get rid of Sanchez and Gittens. There. Done. I just solved it. This makes no sense for the Yankees. They can live without Odor. Alright. In a perfect world, I would have kept him around, but I'm not going to bang tables over it. Frazier, I'm glad to see go. Tyler Wade, that makes no sense. I'm annoyed that they let go of Wade. Disappointed that they got rid of Odor. And relieved that they got rid of Frazier. Moving on now to the Baseball Hall of Fame. The ballot was announced today. And oh my Lanta. This may be, without question, the most controversial ballot that the Hall of Fame has ever had. 4 guys in Barry Bonds, Roger Clemens, Curt Schilling, and Sammy Sosa, who, when you look at their baseball reference pages, are clear-cut Hall of Famers, but obviously Bonds, Clemens, and Sosa have steroids hanging over their heads, and Curt Schilling has ticked everyone off because of his political views. Okay, but Jacob, they've been on the ballot 9 times before. Why is this any different? Well, you just answered your own question. 9 times before, plus this time, that makes 10. That's it. If Bonds, Clemens, Schilling, and Sosa don't get in this year, they're going to have to wait until one of the committees put them in. This is the last chance for the writers to put these guys in. In addition to that, David Ortiz and Alex Rodriguez, 2 prominent figures on MLB broadcasts, are eligible for the Hall of Fame for the first time ever. Alex Rodriguez, obviously, steroids hanging over his head. David Ortiz, according to the New York Times, tested positive for PEDs in 2003. That report came out in 2009. It's important to note that Ortiz was never suspended for his use of PEDs, if he even used PEDs. But that hasn't stopped the Hall of Fame from keeping guys like Bonds and Clemens out. Those guys never served a suspension for PEDs. But because it's hanging over their heads, they're out of the Hall of Fame. If you're going to keep guys like Bonds, Clemens, and Sosa out, then you need to keep Ortiz out also. You can't pick and choose. I mean, quite honestly, I don't like the people who say these guys did steroids before it was banned. these guys didn't. No, I'm of the mindset that you either put them all in or you leave them all out. I mean, there's a legitimate question whether Bonds, Clemens, and Sosa ever used steroids. They're right there with Ortiz in that regard. They were never suspended for it. They've never admitted to it. When they were brought up on criminal charges over it, Bonds and Clemens, they were acquitted. Not enough for the Hall of Fame. You want to tell me that McGwire and A-Rod admitted to using steroids, so we need to keep them out of the Hall of Fame? I sort of understand that, but Alex Rodriguez would have been a Hall of Famer without the steroids, and Mark McGwire saved baseball. In fact, he may have been a Hall of Famer without the steroids. Also, you don't know how much the steroids really helped them. What home runs did they hit that wouldn't have gone out if not for steroids? I think there's too much ambiguity. I think we need to let them all in. As for Schilling, and no one hates Curt Schilling more than me. Alright, I'm a Yankees fan. This guy killed my team in 01 and 04. But because this guy's political views don't align with yours, you're keeping him out of the Hall of Fame? That makes no sense to me. Jim Bunning was a Republican senator from Kentucky for 12 years. He's in the Hall of Fame. Happy Chandler was a Democratic senator and a governor representing the great state of Kentucky. He's in the Hall of Fame. It makes no sense. I'm not saying this because I agree with Schilling's political views. I don't agree with all of them. This guy has made statements saying that gay marriage shouldn't be legal nationwide. I think that marriage should be between any two consenting adults. Does that mean he's not a Hall of Famer? Does that mean he's not one of the greatest pitchers in baseball history? A 3-time World Series winner? A World Series MVP in 01 along with Randy Johnson? 3 out of 4 years finishing as the runner-up for the Cy Young Award? 3,116 strikeouts? An iconic moment with the bloody sock? That sock is in Cooperstown. No one hates Curt Schilling more than me. Killed my team in 01, killed my team in 04. But the guy's a Hall of Famer, he just is. People say there's a character clause to get into the Hall of Fame. You gotta be a Boy Scout to get into the Hall of Fame. That's a bunch of nonsense. Ty Cobb had a ton of controversies around him. He went into the Hall of Fame on the first ballot. I'm not kidding. The actual first ballot, 1936. He went into the Hall of Fame. Kennesaw Mountain Landis. Racist. Hall of Famer. Cap Anson. Racist. Hall of Famer. Curt Schilling's a Hall of Famer. He just is. This is my ballot. Barry Bonds, Roger Clemens, David Ortiz, Andy Pettitte, Manny Ramirez, Alex Rodriguez, Curt Schilling, Gary Sheffield, Sammy Sosa, and Omar Vizquel. That makes 10. I don't think Scott Rowland's a Hall of Famer. He's Hall of Very Good. Todd Helton, no, he was helped too much by Coors Field. Andrew Jones, Hall of Very Good. Torrey Hunter, Hall of Very Good. Billy Wagner, maybe Hall of Very Good. Jimmy Rollins, no. Jeff Kent, no, but it's closer than you think. We have some of the greatest pitchers of the late 90s into the 2000s, and some of the greatest hitters of that same era on this ballot. Some of them extend into the 2010s. These guys are Hall of Famers. We've got to get it right. It's now or never. And I'll say this, if one of the steroid guys get in, watch the floodgates go. Even if only one gets in, the next year you'll see a domino effect. It's going to be very interesting to track this. Alright, now I'll give you some NBA Valk talk. Specifically on the Kings firing Luke Walton. Alvin Gentry has taken over on an interim basis. But you know that that's not going to do much to change the fortunes of the Kings. The Kings are just snake bit. The longest active playoff drought in the NBA, going through countless head coaches, countless players. There are some franchises where you just need to feel bad for them, for how bad they are. And how bad they've been for an incredibly long time. The Kings are one of those teams. Not making the playoffs since 05-06. Not winning a round since 03-04. Since the last playoff year, the Kings have gone through 10 head coaches. 10 head coaches in 16 seasons. You want me to exclude the interim coaches? Fine. 8 head coaches in 16 years. That's not much better. I don't know what the Kings can do to right this ship. Was this really Luke Walton's fault? I mean, Walton wasn't a great coach or anything. He did not do a good job with the Lakers. He rode a great Warriors team to a 39-4 record while he was interim head coach. Steve Kerr was recovering from back surgery. My dead grandmother could have gone 39-4 with that team. This guy has never had more than 37 wins in a season as a full-time head coach. It's tough to blame all of this on Walton, but it's fair to say that he wasn't helping. You take a look at the Kings roster, it has talent. Harrison Barnes, De'Aaron Fox, Buddy Hield, Rashawn Holmes, Tyrese Halliburton, and Davion Mitchell are all talented players. Marvin Bagley's talented too, but he's only played in 4 games this year. The Kings should be better than this. Like, what can be done? I have no idea. Is Alvin Gentry gonna fix this? I don't think so. Gentry hasn't been a particularly good coach. This guy's been a head coach for 17 seasons. He's only made the playoffs 3 times. I mean, I'd like to say that the Kings should go with an experienced head coach, but they've done that. They did it with Walton. They did it with Dave Yeager. They did it with George Karl. And it didn't work. So that means you're going with either an unproven assistant, maybe he has a good reputation, but still, No guarantee that works. Look at the Celtics with Ime Udoka. Or you go the college route. No guarantee that works. Look at John Beilein. I honestly have no idea what the right thing is for the Kings. I mean, Vivek Ranadive isn't a good owner. He meddles too much. You want to tell me that Monty McNair has a good head on his shoulders and he'll be able to right the ship? I mean, I like what McNair is doing. The Tyrese Halliburton pick made a ton of sense. The Davion Mitchell pick made a ton of sense. I just don't know what the magic bullet is for the Kings to get good. I don't know what plan they can put in place to get good. McNair has his work cut out for him. There's no question about that. There was a death in the sports world that I really want to talk about. And that is the passing of Steve Smith, who died on Saturday at the age of 57 from ALS. It's such a shame what happened to Steve Smith. This guy was one of the toughest players in the NFL when he played. And by the end of his life, he was basically unrecognizable. I mean, the guy had a ventilator, a feeding tube, couldn't talk for himself. It was so sad. Here's a guy who may have been the best fullback in the NFL when he played. I mean, this guy was a great blocker, really good short yardage back, carved a ton of holes for guys like Marcus Allen and Bo Jackson. Really, really good player. In 1990, Art Shell's first year with the Raiders as their full-time head coach, the Raiders went 12-4. They beat the Bengals in the divisional round, 20-10. But then they got creamed by the Bills, 51-3, in the AFC title game. The year after that, they lost to the Chiefs in the wild card round, 10-6. They regressed in 92. They missed the playoffs. But the year after that, they went 10-6. Destroyed the Broncos in the wild card round, 42-24. Then lost a nail-biter to the Bills, 29-23 in the divisional round. Smith finished his career with the Seattle Seahawks. Didn't do much there. But this guy was a bruising blocker, really good short yardage back. Like I said, one of, if not the best fullback of his era. I mean, back then, fullbacks were widely used. Obviously, they've taken a back seat now, but Smith had a big role blocking for guys like Marcus Allen and Bo Jackson. Really good player. May he rest in peace. Brooklyn Nets show comes your way tonight. Regular episodes of the Jacob Valk Show usually come your way every weekday afternoon. But seeing as though it's Thanksgiving this week, I'm taking Thursday and Friday off. You will get shows tomorrow and Wednesday. Until next time, I'm Jacob Valk, and always remember, if you disagree with me, you're wrong.